Right. Hello, hello, hello. Doing the first interact. This is a milestone day in the life of this channel. I am going to do the Rorschach test, right? Just because I'm curious about this idea of like I'm just curious how I score. Now, so I don't need to show you guys it. It's gonna be the 10 original ones, right? The 10 10 original blots, I believe. These are like the first, the things. So I'm just gonna like record my response. So you get to watch me and maybe my face make sort of things as I sort of try to figure these things out. Now, one thing before we begin, right, is that um, I will not be doing a good job. But no, but besides me not doing a good job, I will also not be like I won't have the cards, right? So in other words, like there's no, whatever tendency, and I'm not saying there's a very big tendency for me, but whatever tendency I would have to rotate them, I won't obviously be able to rotate them um online, right? I mean, at least I don't think so. So yeah, so the site that I'm on, it's just Rorschach.org, yay, um, is going to be, they don't allow you to rotate. So we're just going to be first impression. I'm just going to give one answer. I do believe that I probably could give more than one answer on each card. We'll see how it goes. But I'm going to rewatch it obviously as I do it. I'm curious about sort of how I'm gonna do with these scores. It's weird because I know now what to say. You always like this kind of cheating, right? But it is what it is. It's called learning. I'm learning to test, right? No, okay. All right. So the first one is an interesting one, and I know that a lot of people say bat, a lot of people say moth, a lot of people say butterfly, right? I don't see any of those things, right? I just don't see a bat. I refuse to see a bat. I think actually now that I think about it, I can see the bat now, but it's only part of it. So in other words, like I can see a bat if it's like part of the thing, but we're missing like in other words, like I can see the bat if it's like 30% of the actual holistic image, in which case it wouldn't be a holistic image, right? It would just be sort of part of it. So um for me, the whole image is um consists of two elephants, right? And the two elephants are climbing maybe a fountain, right? They're climbing something. It looks like maybe like the Stanley Cup inverted, right? So they're sort of climbing this sort of cup-like figure. I would imagine what they're doing is motion. I'm inserting my own motion. We got things to watch out for is holistic image and motion, just to tell you guys, so you can learn to take the test yourselves. But so basically, I think they're trying to get a drink, and I think they're both, maybe they're sort of little kid, brothers, and there's a hot day out, and they're trying to get like a drink, right? So that's sort of what they're doing, and that's interesting, right? Yeah, that is, yeah. We kind of figured that, but that's interesting. What am I saying? I'm saying that I kind of figured that it was the motion that really makes things pop, right? So if you can sort of take the image and describe what's going on within the scene itself, right? So sort of extend out the scene. That's the mark of what they're kind of looking for with these things. So anyway, that's my first response. A lot of people say pigs. I could see pig. In other words, a pig and an elephant. For me, it's the snout. They have their snouts on the top of it, right? So you see, the point is that you've got like two openings, and the first opening is the delineation from the snout and the first legs, the first pair of legs. So you can't see obviously both. It's grainy, it's grainy. And then the second opening is the other leg, right? So you're seeing them. They're sort of hanging on. They're climbing. Now, is that sort of aerodynamically possible? I don't know. Can elephants even climb? Probably not. Elephants can't climb, but that's sort of the idea. So that's what I would go for ink blot numero one. Numero one. Okay, the next one, like I said, I've seen these before. Very clearly, two sort of ancient Chinese who are bowing. I mean, this is very clear. Like the image is just unmistakable. I think it's the color, the red sort of hat, whatever you call it. that they're wearing. You see them cloaked in some type of black robe type thing. I don't. In other words, it's interesting because the image, the sort of idea of the image appears before I even get to the legs. Usually, I like to look at the legs first, but today, I'm just kidding. But it's interesting because I don't like. How do I? You might ask yourself like, how would I explain? How would I explain the red on the legs, right? And I think I would just explain it as sort of shoes. I think it's a little weird though. It would definitely. It's interesting because it's almost like they're cloaked in blood, right? So you could imagine like maybe it's symbolic of sort of like blood rivalries coming to a close. They're sort of meeting at peace. Now, I would say like the idea of bowing, I don't know if that gets a movement score, just to kind of self-score as I'm sort of doing this, but I do think that the image is very clear to me, at least, right? You can also, if you're looking at it from another perspective, you might think of it as like a horned devil type of guy, where the faces are now the inserts of like a skull eye, and he's got like in other words, the sort of darkness is sort of the remnants of his skull or face going out, and so the opening is there's the nose, and then the middle opening is the mouth now. That's like sort of gaping, right? So yeah, so I think, but that would be where I would use the whole image, but it would not be a movement. So it's sort of like, I feel like if you're more sort of whole image, then you're not using movement, right? So that's interesting. I'm gonna go with the bowing. That's a very clear answer for number 2, right? Okay, number 3, also bowing again, right? And I've watched the video on this actually about 2 waiters who are sort of bowing to each other too. The other one is sort of like the ancient China guys meeting hands. This one is where the 2 guys are sort of bowing together, right? You always ask yourself like, why would they be bowing together? So one of the things I've taken this before, and for me, like the symmetry bothers me, and I think it's designed to bother you, right? The sort of idea about the symmetry, but in other words, it's almost begs for a sort of explanation that he's looking in the mirror, right? Like there's one guy and he's looking in the mirror because you don't see. It's hard to. The symmetry is such that there's a natural tendency to take one side of it and form something on the basis of that side of it. But then it's sort of like, well, there's something on the other side that's identical. So you have to sort of, in other words, it calls out for looking in the mirrors, reflections, looking at reflections, et cetera, because it's just so hard. So if we were to do the holistic image, right, a clown face is what you would see, right? So now the two heads would be eyes once again. He's got the red nose. It's a red sort of bow tie looking nose, but it's still a nose. It almost looks like a clown with like war football paint going down his face, right? And you can actually see the remnants of his red hair. That's like him being bald. Like he's a balding clown. He's like Ronald McDonald. That's so interesting. Oh my God, that's so interesting. So that's sort of what I would see there with the third one. Once again, I think the first picture, my inclination is to look at the form of one side and sort of do that. But I can see the holistic image if prompted. One of the things that's interesting is that if you're doing this before, you wouldn't be prompted to get the holistic image. So it's sort of like you gotta know. If you guys want to, this is like, I should title this like how to cheat on the Rorschach, right? But it's interesting. And I bet you, I think, one of the reasons these tests have like expiration dates is because you can learn to take the test, right? Like you can learn to sort of cheat on the test, and then it's like no good anymore, right? So that's sort of the thing, right? Okay, so where are we at? 3? We're ready. Yeah, this one, Inkbot 4, classic one, the sort of giant, right? You're seeing the feet. It's interesting because there's not a lot of motion here. Now, if we were, but there's a very clear holistic image, right? So we're using the holistic image here, but we're not using the we don't see a lot of motion. Let's ask ourselves, if we were to see motion, what would it be? Like, what would we see as sort of emotion? You might imagine like a dust cloud coming at you somehow, right? You can also really, another thing you might say is that like this represents like the two arms, which I think are otherwise arms for the giant, could be fangs of two snakes coming at you, right? So there could be like there's way down there. There's a sort of door, and the two snakes are coming at you, and they're sort of like having the fangs, and you're sort of right there. You're the middle guy, and you're being bombarded against the two snakes. That's a stretch. I'm just kind of really interpreting that, but I think that would be, this is a very clear holistic image. Should we finish? Yeah. The second one, I'm gonna go pretty quickly. This one looks like a moth. Like this clearly looks like a moth to me. It's nice because the symmetry is such that it's joined together. The big thing is when it's disjointed symmetry, it's gonna be harder. It's not disjointed symmetry; it's just gonna be easier. A moth could be flying. I think if it was a moth, it would be stuck at the same time. You could also see not the moth, but sort of pinchers, right? So coming out at you. Not a lot of motion here, but very holistic image. Here, this is where I feel like I'm taking too long, right? This guy is interesting. And let me, how about we do a part two? I'll do a part two later. All right, have a go.